4 years into the economic recovery, housing prices are up, the unemployment rate continues to inch down, and the stock market climbs to new heights. But these encouraging numbers hide the disturbing reality that the economic rebound has created a decades-long trend of greater income inequality. In the 1900s, Jacob Riis was very successful in spurring Gilded Age reforms and closing the gap between the rich and the poor through his shocking photographs. However, 120 years later, we have the same large gap between the rich and the poor that we once had. New York displays the most evident example of income inequality, with only blocks separating billionaires from families in poverty. But such income inequality is obvious throughout all major U.S. cities and across the world. As of 2012, in the United States, the 85 richest people have the same combined wealth as the poorest 3.5 billion. In both the original Gilded Age and the new Gilded Age, certain things like a complete celebration of wealth, the social Darwinist theory, a decline in social trust, and poor social mobility are evident. In the 21st century, the increasing gap between the richest and the rest of America risks collapsing the American ideal of fair play and democracy because elected officials respond to the views of affluent constituents but ignore the views of poor Americans. Republican presidents in particular have consistently produced much less income growth for middle class and working poor families than for affluent families, greatly increasing inequality. For example, the massive Bush tax cuts in 2001 and 2003 and the loss of minimum wage under his presidency. It is also clear that political scandals in the 21st century parallel very closely to the scandals involving machine politics like Tammany Hall that took place during the Gilded Age. In 2000, the conservative majority on the Supreme Court intervened in the disputed presidential election between Al Gore and George W. Bush. The majority on the Supreme Court twisted itself into legal knots in order to deliver the presidency to the candidate who would restock the federal courts and the Supreme Court itself with reliable right-wingers. Some sources suggest that technology advancements have created a new era of robber barons. 10 of the people on the Forbes magazine's tally of the world's 100 richest billionaires made their money from computer and/or network technology. For example, in the early 2000s, Microsoft was able to monopolize the market for PC operating systems and office software and eliminate rivals like Netscape to dictate pricing. In the era when the PC was the computer to have, Bill Gates was the king because he controlled the PC. This method of gaining wealth is extremely similar to the robber barons of the 1900s. Progressive era reforms were promoted by educating the public about the system's corruption and inequality through the muckraker's investigative journalism. Ida Tarbell's issues in McClure about the history of John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil Company helped lead to the end of the oil monopoly. Upton Sinclair's The Jungle portraying an immigrant life in a Chicago meatpacking industry prompted Roosevelt to call for investigations. Muckraker's journalism is still used as a way to expose corruption today, like Matt Taibbi, who has written extensively on post-financial crises in America. In recent years, some news outlets have looked closely at the roots of income inequality, as Reuters did in 2012 series called The Unequal State of America. The economic concerns of today are the same economic concerns of 100 years ago: poor social mobility, inadequate wages, and corporate scandals. In the last 30 years, there has been a tremendous decline in the number of good-paying manufacturing jobs due to technology advances. Advances in technology have created a hollowing out of the middle-level jobs because they've been outsourced or they've been automated. Even though it shows that the unemployment rate has dropped some in the last couple of years, the rate is actually a survey of the people looking for work, and the lower rate is due to fewer people in the job market rather than more people employed. Nearly 6 million fewer people are employed today than just 4 years ago. This data indicates that Americans are giving up on job searching, and this also shows that they have just as little or no social mobility that we once saw in the 1900s. Corporate scandals are just as prominent today as they were in the Gilded Age. For example, in the early 2000s, America's most famous homemaker became center stage of headlines, speculations, and eventually a federal investigation concerning her stock trading. Martha Stewart was accused of an insider trading after she sold 4,000 uncloned shares one day before the firm's stock prices plummeted.